Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. The last instruction. Speaking until the hand, into the hand, microphone of his dictating machine, oblivious of his bodily condition, Prabhupada described patiently and methodically how Nanda Maharaj's family priest, Gargamuni, performed the name-giving ceremony for baby Krishna. In his purport, Srila Prabhupada often spoke about his personal experiences and realization, sometimes sitting in the pre-dawn open air on the second floor veranda, and sometimes in the humid heat of bright afternoon. Srila Prabhupada worked describing the limitless Vedic knowledge, just as his predecessors, the Goswamis and Krishnadas Kaviraj, had done when worshipping Krishna and Lord Chaitanya while living in Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada, however, was the first great acharya to make Krishna-conscious literature available to persons of all countries throughout the world, regardless of birth, status, or previous character. Even as he composed the latest chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, thousands of young men and women were working on his behalf to preach the Vedic message to the world. His disciples were, in fact, keenly aware of how Srila Prabhupada was producing the 10th canto purports in Vrindavan, and they prayed to Lord Krishna that he be allowed to continue for many years so that he could complete the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It's amazing that Prabhupada not only translated the books, but also engineered a whole mechanism of how to have them distributed. Amazing. Srila Haridas Thakur, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur appeared in a Muslim family in the village of Budana, but after some time he came to live on the bank of the Ganges at Fulia near Shantipur. He chanted 300,000 holy names, 192 rounds every day. Feeling threatened by his conversion to Vaishnavism, the Mohammedan Qazi ordered to have him beaten in 22 marketplaces to kill him. By Lord Chaitanya's mercy, however, Haridas Thakur miraculously survived, and, exhibiting extreme humility and meekness, he forgave his tormentors. While chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra in Benapal, he was personally tested by Mai Devi herself. In the dramas performed by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he played the part of the police chief. There is no end to the transcendental qualities of Haridas Thakur. He was so exalted that Advaitacharya, when performing the Shraddha ceremony of his father, offered him the first plate. This plate is usually offered to the most qualified Brahmin present at the ceremony. While seeing Lord Chaitanya's lotus face, holding his feet upon his chest and chanting Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Haridas left this world. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Krishna Chaitanya. The Lord himself took the body of Haridas on his lap, and he danced with it in great ecstasy. Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally buried him and begged alms for a festival to honor Haridas Thakur's departure. The Samadhi of Haridas Thakur is located by the sea in Jagannath Puri. Haridas Thakur ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the markers have been left out, so I'm not sure. Okay. So I'll read the translation. In the valley of Mandara Hill, Hiranyakashipu began performing austerities by standing with his toes on the ground, keeping his arms upward and looking toward the sky. This position was extremely difficult, but he accepted it as a means to attain perfection. From the hair on Hiranyakashipu's head there emanated an effulgent light as brilliant and intolerable as the rays of the sun at the time of dissolution. Seeing the performance of such austere penances, the demigods, who had been wandering throughout the planets, now returned to their respective homes. Because of Hiranyakashipu's severe austerities, fire came from his head, and this fire and its smoke spread throughout the sky, encompassing the upper and the lower planets, which all became extremely hot. Because of the power of his severe austerities, all the rivers and oceans were agitated. The surface of the globe with its mountains and islands began trembling, and the stars and planets fell. All directions were ablaze. scorched and extremely disturbed because of Hiranyakashipu's severe austerities, all the demigods left the planets where they reside and went to the planet of Lord Brahma, where they informed the Creator as follows: O Lord of the demigods, O Master of the universe, please, because of the fire emanating from Hiranyakashipu's head as a result of severe austerities, we have become so disturbed that we could not stay in our planets, but have come to you. And this is before he's got any benedictions. This is him, just on his own. He's managed to threaten the entire universe. So it's like, if you don't give him a benediction, you're going to be in big trouble anyway. So Lord Brahma's in an awkward situation. O great person, chief of the universe, if you think it proper, kindly stop these disturbances meant to destroy everything before all your obedient subjects are annihilated. Hiranyakashipu has undertaken a most severe type of austerity. Although his plan is not unknown to you. Kindly listen as we submit his intentions. Text 9 and 10. Shrishtva chara charam idam. Shrishtva chara charam idam. Tapo yoga samadhina. Adyaste sava dishyebhya. Adyaste sava dishyebhya. Paramesti nijasanam. Paramesti nijasam. Tad aham vadamanena. Tam aham vadamanena. Tapo yoga samadhina. Tapo yoga samadhina. Kalatmanos cha nityatvat. Kalatmanansna nityatvat. Sadyishe tatamana. Sadayishe tatmana. Shrishvachara charamida. Tapa yoga samadhina. Adyaste sabadishyebhya. Paramashti nijasana. Tadaham vadamamena. Tapo yoga samadhina. Kalatmanas chanityatvat. Adyashishe tatmana. Tatmana. Anyone like to try that? Shishtva chara charamida. Tapo yoga samadhina. Adyaste sabadishnebhya. Paramashti nijasanam. Adaham vadamanena. Tapo yoga samadhina. Anatmanos chanityatvat. Shadiyashyai tatatmana. Yoga samadhina. Ajaste sabadishyebhya. Paramasti nijasanam. Paramanena. Tapo yogam samadhina. Natmana sinityatva. Okay. Shristva, creating. Chara, moving. Acharam, and not moving. Idam, this. tapa of austerity, yoga and mystic power, samadhina by practicing the trance, adhyaste is situated in, savadishyabhya that than all the planets, including the heavenly planets. Paramasti, Lord Brahma, Nija Asanam, his own throne. Tat, therefore, Aham, I, Vadamanena, by dint of increasing, Tapa, austerity, Yoga, mystic powers, Samadhina, and trance, Kala, of time, Atmana, and of the soul, Cha, and Nityatvat, from the eternality, Sajyashe, shall achieve, Tata, so much, Atmana, for my personal self. The Supreme Person within this universe, Lord Brahma, has gotten his exalted post by dint of severe austerities, mystic power and trance. Consequently, after creating the universe, he has become the most worshipful demigod within it. Since I am eternal and time is eternal, I shall endeavor for such austerity, mystic power and trance for many, many births, and thus I shall occupy the same post occupied by Lord Brahma. Responsibly, please. The Supreme Person within this universe, Lord Brahma, has gotten his exalted post by dint of severe austerities, mystic power and trance. Consequently, after creating the universe, he has become the most worshipful demigod within it. Since I am eternal and time is eternal, I shall endeavor for such austerity, mystic power and trance, many, many births. And thus I shall occupy the same post occupied by Lord Brahma. Hiranyakashipu's determination was to occupy the post of Lord Brahma, but this was impossible because Brahma has a long duration of life, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 8.17. Sahasra Yuga Parantam Aha Yad Brahmano Vidu. 1,000 yugas equals 1 day of Brahma. The duration of Brahma's life is extremely great, and consequently it was impossible for Hiranyakashipu to occupy that post. Nonetheless, his decision was that since the self, Atma, and the time are both eternal, if he could not occupy the post in one lifetime, he would continue to execute austerities life after life, so that sometime he would be able to do so. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manavastam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swavadantikam. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Interesting to note that Hiranyakashipu, the reason why Lord Brahma came wasn't because Hiranyakashipu couldn't keep doing it. It was because the demigods couldn't tolerate it anymore. But as far as Hiranyakashipu was concerned, if Lord Brahma wasn't going to turn up then, he was in it for the long haul. He was going to be doing it for many lifetimes. He was like, okay, well, I'm eternal. If it takes 1,000 lifetimes, fine. So that's how powerful. And what's interesting also, if you compare Haridas Thakur, he was beaten in 22 marketplaces. And when he was finally, because the Muslims said in the end, look, you know, if you don't die, we're going to get killed. We've been asked to kill you, and you're not dying. So Haridas Thakur says, okay, well, just throw me in the Ganges. But when they threw him in the Ganges, he went light as a feather and he just floated down. And later on, Lord Chaitanya showed his back, and he'd taken all the beatings. So interesting that the devotee, Haridas Thakur, wasn't feeling any discomfort. And Lord Chaitanya was taking the austerities. And Hiranyakashipu was taking the austerities on himself. So he was so austere. Maybe it's even more austere than getting beaten in 22 marketplaces, standing on the tips of your toes for thousands of years. But it's very austere. And nobody else was taking that except him, which a normal jiva could not do, only because he was from a special situation and he was empowered to do such a thing. Was he capable of it? He was more potentially, it's interesting because Lord Brahma gave him the benedictions, but he'd already shown that he could subjugate the universe just by the austerity he was performing. All the planets were ablaze. So he had the whole universe under his grip. So that's how powerful the jiva can become. That's a jiva that's not connected to Krishna. And then a jiva that is connected to Krishna can have a powerful influence. We say every morning, your fame is spread throughout the three worlds. So, and we were hearing yesterday about the pastime of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So his fame is spread throughout the three worlds. How do we know that? Yeah. And Lord Brahma knew, Narada Muni knew, Lord Shiva knew, everyone knew him. So Srila Prabhupada similarly, his fame is known throughout the three worlds. So the jiva, when the jiva is empowered, because if the jiva is Nitya Siddha, eternally liberated, then he's not restricted in any way with the material energy. Somebody asked Srila Prabhupada, why didn't Bhaktivinoda, if he was so powerful, why didn't he spread Krishna consciousness? And Srila Prabhupada said he left the work for you to do, so that you could get the glory of Krishna consciousness. Some people feeling tired this morning? Anyway, I thought that was interesting. And Haridas Thakur, after he got tested in that way, then he got tested by Maya. So, and why is that? So that when we hear these pastimes, we know what the standard is, and we can aspire in our own small way for that. And so similarly for us, Krishna is using us as an example. We're the pioneers right now of the Krishna consciousness movement. The demigods are waiting to take birth, but they may hang on because it may be too austere for them right now. You start getting 3 subjects in the Sunday feast, and then they start coming down. Any questions or comments? Yes, Pancha Thakur.
Just when you're describing Hiranyakashipu as empowered, does that mean he's a Shaktavesh avatar?
No, he's not referred to as a Shaktavesh because he's a demon. Although, I won't say that in class, but afterwards I'll tell you something Srila Prabhupada said about somebody who did appear to be a demon. And Srila Prabhupada said he was a Shaktavesh avatar, he'd come down to destroy a certain race of people. Which I couldn't say that over the in public. Someone would get very upset. And that's what he said. At the same time, we know that Jai and Vijay were offered, and they chose demons because it would be quicker. But in one sense, it wasn't really quicker because Hiranyakashipu was around for a long time. If he'd been a devotee, he would have had a shorter life, wouldn't he? At least he would if he'd taken birth as a devotee 7 times on earth, he would. Although, yeah, because Hiranyakashipu, although he was on earth doing his austerities. See, why is it always earth that's chosen for all the pastimes? You'd think if anywhere you'd perform austerities, somewhere more spectacular than just on earth, right? But Bhumi is the plane upon which you accrue karma, good or bad, pious credit. It's the one where you're facilitated the most. So if you're going to acquire Sukriti, then you go to the middle planetary system to do it. Where the higher ones, they're just enjoying their Sukriti, and the low ones, they're just suffering their Duskriti. Suindu, Sukha Dukkha, good and bad.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. This hasn't come yet in the translations we have read, but allow me to go a bit further in the past time. So we'll see that Lord Brahma does appear in front of Hiranyakashipu and gives him benediction. Why does Lord Brahma give him the benediction knowing like what Hiranyakashipu is up to and what will he do?
Well, Lord Nrsimhadev asked him the same thing, didn't he? He said, why did you? He said, be very careful about handing out benedictions in the future. At the same time, it illustrated how the Lord will uphold the devotee's promise. So Srila Prabhupada promises 1460, 16 rounds and 14 principles. Then we follow that. And because he said, if you just do this, you'll go back to Godhead, then Krishna will fulfill that promise. Even if the promise is really, really, really tricky like this one. So, and because Lord Brahma is rubbing shoulders with Krishna all the time, then we can take it that whatever he's doing is being dictated by his Tene Brahma Hida Adikavya Mayan Surya Tejo Pradam Vinmaya Charcha Sago Misha Dam Nasvena Sadhana. So because he's the Lord is directing Brahma in the heart, then he, although externally he may be saying he shouldn't have done that was foolish, that's also to instruct everybody else. Don't trust demons and give them facility. And at the same time, it's also showing how even if you offer the most awkward promises, still the Lord will have to follow them because you're his devotee. And that point came up yesterday about the the mercy of the spiritual master, by the mercy of the spiritual master. So if we are able to please, if the spiritual master turns around and says, I'm very, very pleased with you, and I guarantee you're going back to Godhead this lifetime, then you've cracked it. I think it was Bodhidharma who said also, the secret in Krishna consciousness is how to make the heart of the advanced devotee melt. If you can do something to really, really please your spiritual master, then he'll take you by the hand at the time of death back to Godhead. Whereas we could be like Hiranyakashipu and just have said, no, I'm going to do it by my own austerities. I'm going to do 7,000 books a day. I'm going to fast 72 hours on the Ekadashi. I'll chant my japa on the tips of my toes. And then it won't matter whether I get the mercy of Gurudev or not. And then they make the atmosphere in the temple intolerable, and everybody's ablaze with their false ego. Srimad Bhagavatam as it never was. So so many lessons. The Lord is the expert judge of time and circumstance. So sometimes the mother will chastise the daughter in front of the daughter-in-law because the daughter-in-law can't take it. So in the same way, Lord Brahma was later chastised, so that we can all understand that that's not a good idea to do that. Don't allow people who are not very advanced too intimately into the circle of Krishna consciousness. Any other questions? How to stay awake in class? That's a good question. A good way to stay awake is to see the process of understanding things is we automatically, if we're actually listening, automatically there will be questions. That's the process of understanding, actually. If you haven't got questions, then you could doubt your assimilation process. It's like giving you a load of objects and they all fit into different things. So you're trying to fit them into different things. That's the process. And then something doesn't fit, and you ask, I've got this one here, this doesn't seem to fit into there, it doesn't fit into there. It's the process of assimilation. And because we're practicing Krishna consciousness, then there's a synchronicity in what we're hearing and what we're experiencing. Like this morning, I was hearing Srila Prabhupada and he was referring to Haridas Thakur, but that was just random, you know. We just happened to be, it was a conversation in the morning walk, and they were asking, is Lord Brahma a pure devotee? And Srila Prabhupada was saying no. He says, but he's the head of our Sampradaya. And he says, he is a devotee. And they said, but he was also Haridas Thakur. So then Srila Prabhupada didn't go any further with it. He just left it like that. There's a lot of things he left just like that, because maybe the answer wasn't able to be understood at that point. It's like some devotees would like to read Vilap Kusumanjali, and they've been asking me if they could read it. And we just read last night that, and I never realized this, and I'm sure you've never heard this before, that there's different stages of remembrance, and the first stage is recollection. And before you can engage in recollection, you may decide, oh, I really want to meditate on the pastimes of Radharani and Krishna. You have to get permission of your spiritual master to recollect. Because Vilap Kusumanjali is all about the intimate pastimes, Rati Manjari, Shrimati Radharani, Rupa Manjari. So you're getting a glimpse into that world. And that's nice. You can just read it. I think that was really nice. Then put it down and then go and peel the potatoes or whatever it is you got to do that day. But if you want to recollect it, you need permission. Isn't that interesting? So devotees may have not been around very long. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said 15 to 20 years of steady chanting before you can start Artha Pravritti. So Artha Pravritti, which is where you're meditating on the pastimes and Astakali Alila, you're thinking at this time of day Krishna and Radharani are doing this. That's something which is achieved only after, and those 15 to 20 years are only after initiation. And then from initiation, first of all, there's Shraddha, then there's Sadhu Sangha, and then after Bhanjana Kriya is when the Anartha Vritti starts. And then after Anartha Vritti, for a long period of time comes Nishna. And then at the stage of Bhanjama, then you're entitled to look into these pastimes. Is that discouraging or is that encouraging? Well, it's not encouraging if you just joined.
If something's given out very easily, then you may not appreciate it so much.
Yeah.
We should be able to appreciate these pastimes, the goal of life. So.
Yeah, the Vikriditam Rajabhadibedidam Cha Vishnu. That's the meditating on the spot and pastimes of Krishna with the gopis, the young gopis. So the qualifying factor is, can you do it with faith? And generally, faith isn't something you can just switch on, you know. I think I'll have some faith. Oh yeah, that's much better now. Faith is something that you achieve, isn't it? Sometimes over a sustained period of time, the faith starts to come. Isn't it interesting that it's something we struggle with in the material world in general, is this ability to accept that something exists. But we always have to find out where did it start. Anything we come across. If someone says, oh, it's just always been a chair, well, immediately, it couldn't have always just been a chair. It must have been a tree at one time. And then before it was a tree, it must have been a seed. That's always the way it is, isn't it? But the fact is that if anything exists, then it always has to have existed, because if you keep going back to what caused it, you have to eventually come back to something that just always existed. I mean, it's actually a very confounding situation to be in, where you find that you exist, you acknowledge the fact that you exist, and that implies that you've always existed. And that's like, I'm going to have always existed, but the fact that you exist, and you see everything around you that exists, nothing comes from nothing. Nothing just pops up out of nothing. If anything exists, it's always existed. And that's really hard. In the material consciousness, it's very hard for us to get our head around that. In the spiritual world, it's the eternal present. Everything is just always there, and it's just always existed. Which seems like, oh, well, that's handy, isn't it? You don't have to try and work anything out. It's It's always just that the tree was always there, the blue sky was always there, the cows were always there, Krishna was always there. It's just always existed. It confounds the material mind. Isn't it confounding to just, that this has just always existed? Everything around us has always existed. In the spiritual world, it is like, of course, here we know that things were in another state, and then they've changed into another state, and they're changing all the time to other states, but still the elements that make up everything have always existed. And so they say, well, yeah, everything did just always exist in a tiny point. It was just a tiny little speck of something. That's always been existing. But it still doesn't, no matter how much you remove the problem down the line, you still have to get to the point where something just always existed. Or you could say, which would sound very unscientific, you could say, well, actually, no, what it is, there was actually nothing. There wasn't even a speck. There was nothing. It was actually nothing. But somehow or other, it just came out of nowhere, from nothing. Or it's always existed. They're your two alternatives, right? Either of them are very unreasonable. Doesn't quite fit in with our ability to conjecture that something came out of nothing, or that something always existed.
So we hear in Bhagavatam that Krishna creates the material world through his different expansions. Whereas the spiritual world, like, I'm just trying to understand what cannot be understood, but like Krishna's always surrounded by his devotees. He's always in Vrindavan. He's always, Mother Yashoda is eternally his mother. So there's all these things. Yeah, I can't even phrase the question. It doesn't quite make sense because our language doesn't work so much. But
it wouldn't be so bad if Krishna was just like a little blue blob, and it was just a blue blob, and it didn't really do very much. It was just floating around for trillions of years, and then the blue blob exploded one day, and then Mother Yashoda came out, and then he got a dhoti, and he put some marks on his feet. Like a blue blob, we can get our head around that, but not a cowhead boy with a flu and a girlfriend, and the whole thing. It's like, how can that just have always been there, in one go? It's just like belows our capacity to comprehend. So I guess we can come to the point of, okay, this is inconceivable, achinta shakti. It is inconceivable, but Krishna can reveal if he wants to. It's inconceivable that Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are standing on the altar in our temple and receiving worship. It's inconceivable, isn't it? How that they're alive. Srila Prabhupada would have conversations with the deities, and we're trying to serve them so they will reveal that they are actually personally present on the altar, that they're accepting our service. But only if we want to know, only if we want to acknowledge the dialogue that's going on between us and the Lord, then he can start to reveal himself and speak to us. He said the perfection of deity worship is that one day, while you're worshipping the deity will speak to you. So there's an intermediate stage where you're trying to do the right thing, Vaidhi Bhakti, you're trying to follow all the rules and regulations. But Krishna's not yet stepped into the picture and given you his darshan, revealed that he is none different from his name, none different from his deity. And can you weather the storm in between practicing Vaidhi Bhakti to the stage of achieving Raganuga Bhakti, where you're aware, you're spontaneously attracted? It doesn't have to take long, but it generally seems to take quite a while. And Ravindra Swarup was saying one of the problems he sees in ISKCON is that a lot of devotees get stuck in Anartha Nivritti. They never quite get out of it. They just stay fighting their unwanted things, and they spend their whole life fighting and fighting and fighting, but they never quite get to the stage of steadiness, nishta, and then onto ruchi. So it's not a guaranteed thing that when you start chanting and doing devotional service, that everything is just going to fall into place. I mean, there's quite a few places where Srila Prabhupada uses the word automatic. You will make automatically would make advancement. But Sri Ramaj makes the point, he says, automatic advancement is a result of and not an alternative to educated study. Oh, well, I don't have to do any educated study. Because you just make automatic advancement. Doesn't matter whether you read the books. Just Ali Krishna, and you make automatic advancement because you read all the books, you assimilate the information, and you implement it. Then you make automatic advancement. Otherwise, you don't make automatic advancement. You automatically go backwards. So it's not a taken that just because you're engaging that you're going to achieve it. There's a lot of other elements that have to be put into play. It's nice you're doing Vaidhi Bhakti and you're doing all the right things, and now you have to be patient and wait until the point where you're breaking down in tears because you so much want. The Vipalambar is so strong, your separation is so strong from perfection, and you're begging the Lord, I don't think I can continue unless you give me some nectar, some realization, some insight. How can I continue on? Because it just seems like such a hard struggle, isn't it? Like pushing a boulder up a hill, but the hill never seems to have an end, and you're just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. You know, at some point you have to reach Nishta, which is where the hill plateaus, and then Ruchi, where you go down the other side of the hill, and then you're not pushing anymore. Then actually the boulder's pulling you. You're running like anything to keep up with the boulder.
You're mentioning that we can feel separation from this perfection. This is different from separation? Is it different from separation from Krishna? Like pure devotees are feeling separation from Krishna. It's very, very intense, but they're far beyond any sort of material contamination. Whereas a person speaking my separation from Krishna is just because there's so many material desires in a way I can't focus on the holy name for more than a very short period of time. So
well, the Bhakti Lata Bij is basically all the different principles that we're following. And as we cultivate that, it grows and takes us to Krishna. So we may not be feeling separation directly from Krishna, but we're feeling separation from Krishna. And we're yearning for it. That's the separation of Krishna in its seedling form, actually. And we're cultivating that intense desire to the point where everything else pales into insignificance, and the only thing that will satisfy the yearning of the soul is that contact. And Krishna will give his contact at times and then withdraw it. And then that just intensifies the Vipalambar, you know. The anticipation of meeting Krishna is more intense than the meeting of Krishna. And then when you meet Krishna, Radharani and Krishna, they meet at Prem Sarovara. And Madhu Mangal says, Madhu has gone, he's chasing a bee. And he shouts into the Kunj, no, Madhu has gone. And Radharani immediately thinks, oh no. And even though she's sitting there right in front of Krishna, she becomes overwhelmed in separation. So she starts crying, and Krishna's saying, no, I'm here. But she can't hear him. And then he starts to feel separation. And then Prem Sarovara is the tears that flowed from Radha and Krishna and filled up with their tears. So even you're a perfected being and you're there with Krishna, still separation is part of the dynamic of love. That you don't take the person for granted. Even when you meet them, you're thinking, oh, when am I going to be separated from them again? You know? How long will I be with Krishna before he again goes home? So that yearning has different stages. So initially we practice Krishna consciousness, and we have utsamai. We think we're fine. We've cracked it. We understand everything. We know 3 slokas, and you know we can pass out a few books. So we think, well, I can put my dhoti on straight. So I've cracked it. I'm there. You know, it's not giving diksha soon. Utsamai, false the false confidence. And then after a while, we start realizing, oh, actually, I'm not that elevated. I'm not as elevated as I thought I was. And then the dawning of humility. And we feel like everyone is better. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says real humility is that you feel everyone is better than you. Not just initiating sannyasis. Everyone is better than you. But that may be an unwanted thing, you see. We have unwanted things, but they may actually be things that we should want, but we may not want them. We may not want humility. We may not want selfless service. We may think we want it, but then when Krishna goes to give it to us, we realize, oh, actually, I don't think I really want this. Not just yet. Anyway, can you give me something sugar-coated? But after you've been sucking the sugar for a while, eventually, whatever it's coating it is going to come through. And then, I haven't really got a taste for this. I thought I had a taste for it. I had a taste for the kind of, it's called Taranga Ranjani. Taranga Ranjani is the facilities. Because when you practice Krishna consciousness, you get a nice new bead bag. And you're like, and everything's, you're fired up because you're getting some facilities, you know. Taranga Ranjani. Or you can charm people. You can go up to them and speak to them and charm them, and they give you huge donations. And you start thinking, wow, this is pretty cool. I'm pretty cool. Taranga Ranjani. So that causes unsteady devotional service as well. And then Vayuddha Vikalpa, mental vacillation. Taranga Ranjani, fighting the sense object. No, that's for material facility. And then there's a niyama yakshama, which is the inability to follow rules and commitments. To be able to take vows and follow them. So it's a formidable terrain that we traverse, and we're trying to get to the stage of becoming fixed and starting to experience real separation from Krishna. It's interesting because how can you really feel separation until you've met somebody? Like Narada Muni, he felt separation once he'd seen Krishna. Up until then, he was doing his meditation, and he was following what the Bhagavats had been doing, the Bhaktivedantas, by eating their remnants. But once Krishna appeared before him and went away, then he was really experiencing separation.
Is it like Rukmini? She just hears about Krishna, and from this hearing, she develops such an intense desire that she won't accept anyone else as her husband.
Yeah.
So every day we hear about Krishna, and that's where the separation comes.
Well, that's interesting actually, because Queen Rukmini is Chandravali. You'll have to read Krishna Sangati to find out about that. So they're all eternally related, you know. And then she was Satyabhama. Radharani went to was in separation from Krishna, and she went into the Jamuna, and she went under the water. And so to all intents and purposes, it looked like she drowned. But the sun god took her up, and he said, when the Shamataka jewel is given, then you'll be able to meet Krishna again. So then when Satyajit was doing his austerities, he gave him Satyabhama, who was Radharani. Although Radharani couldn't remember, she just thought she was Satyabhama, and gave him the Shamataka jewel. So there's a few layers of other things going on, actually. They're not just like an ordinary queen that never, a princess that never met Krishna and just fell in love with Krishna. She'd always been in love with Krishna. It's amazing, isn't it? At the time when Srila Prabhupada was leaving, all the devotees were hoping he would finish the 10th canto and he would live for many years. And he left and the 10th canto was unfinished, you know. But since then, the 10th the 11th and the 12th have been translated and made available. And now so many other, such a wealth of literature we're being furnished with. And that wealth is growing all the more. Our library is getting bigger and bigger every day. New books are being translated. There's more and more information, you know. All we need now is we just need to qualify ourselves. First deserve and then desire. You know, once we get to the stage of Majjhimas and Uttama, then there's so much amazing literature there, you know. Srila Prabhupada is describing in his books what the books are that we should also look at, you know. But we have to become qualified. So generally, the stage of Bhajana Kriya, then the anarthas start to come up, and then we become fixed, and then we start to experiencing taste, and then attachment, and then actually bhav. So we haven't got time to waste.
What would you say is the most important aspects to focus on to not get stuck in anartha nivritti, to speed up the process of anartha nivritti?
If I knew that, I'd be doing it myself. See, we have to be patient. It's interesting, actually, Bhaktisiddhanta says, when mundane thoughts enter your mind while you're chanting your japa, don't slacken. He says it will come. Focus and control of the mind will come. It's an irrevocable fruit of practicing and chanting Hare Krishna. Then he says, do not be impatient. And what it reminds me of, when I was just a very young boy, I was only 5 years old, and for some reason, I really thought the story was important, although when I was 5, I couldn't understand what it was. But there was a blackbird that made its house. It was the only bird, it's the only bird that can make a house out of a nest. It has a roof on it. No other bird does it, apart from the blackbird. So all the birds got together one day and they said to the blackbird, could you show us how to do it? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. And he took a branch and he went like that. And the robin said, I know how to do that. And he flew off. And then he said, then you take another branch. And the sparrow said, I know how to do that. And he flew off. And eventually, as he was getting toward the end, and he was putting the last branch and he looked around and all the birds had gone. So you have to stay long enough to find out how to build the house. And if you become impatient, then you'll never know. You'll never find out. You don't make advancement by giving up, you see. So at whatever stage you get to, if you give up at that point, maybe you've been doing it for 40 years and you're thinking, I'm getting nowhere. I may as well give up. It's a waste of time, you know. Generally, they say that the point at which you're just about to make a lot of progress forward is usually just at the point where you're going to give up. That's what a test is. If the tests were easy, they wouldn't be tests. So the test has to be of such a nature that it seems impossible. That's the nature of the test. It has to. That's part of the composition of the test. Is it has to seem insurmountable. Devishiguna Mammaya Turachaya. Tarachaja means like it's just impossible. You know? It has to seem like that. Otherwise, it's not really a proper test, is it? It's like trying to purify gold, and you put it in the fire, and you think, oh, actually, that's a bit too hot. So you turn the fire down. So then you never get to purify the gold. The test has to be intense, and then it burns you, and then you become melted, purified. So we can't evade the issue. Niyamagraha is to not take the next step forward, or to take the step forward prematurely. Niyamagraha means knowing exactly where you are and knowing exactly what the next step is that you need to take. And if you make the mistake of taking the step too soon, or not taking the step when you're supposed to, that's Niyamagraha. And that will spoil your devotional service. So that's tricky, because you think, well, I'll just do it. I peel the potatoes and I'll make advancement automatically. But peeling potatoes has got nothing to do with Niyamagraha, you know. And to understand whether you are hanging back and not taking the step forward that you should take, that's like serious introspection, isn't it? What am I actually capable? What does Krishna want me to do? What am I actually capable of? What am I just doing to stay in my comfort zone? So so there's some beautiful books. Sankalpa Kaumudi by Sri Maharaj is really, really useful. Sri Shrindabhakti Chintamani. And it's really like giving you the map so you can find out where you are and what you have to traverse to get to the point that you need to get to, you know. Prabhupada wanted everyone onto the second class platform as soon as possible. Wanted them all to be Majjhima Adhikari. Because Majjhima doesn't fall down, you see. He only goes forward. Kanishta's up and down all the time, you know. Majjhima's like, and then it just makes progress from there. Then you're not wasting your energy, then you see. If you keep going backwards and forwards, then you're wasting a lot of time and you're wasting a lot of energy. And you may become impatient. We need to get Ruchi as quickly as possible. That's really, because we all joined for bliss, didn't we? We didn't join to stand on our tiptoes for 10,000 years. We joined because we thought, this is going to be nectar, you know, I'm going to become so blissful. That was the plan. We didn't join to become miserable, right? And fed up and frustrated. That wasn't the plan.
I was reading one quote from Devanrita Maharaj yesterday. He says, we're not here to motivate people to believe that there is a God. That's simply children's play. We're here to motivate people to believe that they can qualify themselves to perceive God.
Who was saying that?
Devanrita Maharaj.
Have you read his book, Bhava Bhakti? No. It's really nice. His style is a little bit like Kadambakana Maharaj. He's kind of out of the box, but then he goes out of the box to fetch you, and then he brings you into the box. That's kind of the way he does it, you know. Which is a great art, to be able to read Srila Prabhupada's books and then open them up and make them accessible to you, because you may think you understand them, but if you're not applying them properly, then you don't really. They say the first blossoming of the process of hearing is the ability to implement what you hear. Otherwise, you're not really hearing, you see. It's not really going in. And devotees like this, I've got that ability to help you hear and understand what it actually means, what the implications of that are. If Krishna is saying this and this, then this means this and that. And we may just have a very kind of superficial understanding of what it means, you know. If you do not hear me, you will be lost. You think, okay, so I'll read Bhagavad Gita, I'm hearing Krishna, I'm fine, you know. But there's a lot in that. When you're chanting your japa, are you hearing Krishna? Or does it sound like this? It actually quite often does. If you actually catch yourself sometimes chanting, and then you realize this is just like a garbled mass of nonsense. And then you just pulling the beads down. And then 2 hours of that, and then you think, I don't really feel fired up after that. You know? Krishna's saying, if you hear me, you become conscious of me. It's like, and then suddenly you suddenly hear and you go, oh, that's it, yeah, Hare Krishna. Why didn't I do that before? That's it. You just got to do that. You just got to hear it, you know. But then the next day it's all going to again, you know. It's like they say you can't see the forest for the trees. You heard the expression? You can't see the forest for the trees. So you're missing what it is. You can't step back and say, this is Krishna Leela, this is the rasa dance, this is it, this is Radharani, this is Krishna, they're dancing, this is what I'm engaging in. Not because to do it only takes about 5% of the consciousness to do that. So you got 95% of your mind to try and engage while that's going on. And the mind's roaming around thinking, yeah, we're doing the giddy. But anyway, do you remember the way he was looking at me yesterday? What was our plan anyway for the future? We were going to go for a retreat here, and then we were going to do this, and we were going to do that. Like that's the 95%, right? And then are we supposed to be chanting? Oh, it's okay, we're chanting, giddy, whatever. That's fine. Okay. Anyway, back to this. So what's the plan? What are we going to do? If he says that, what are you going to say? Iskon Gurvind ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanandi Haribol.
His Grace Adhoksaja Krishna Prabhu ki.